Well, I'm back in the shop. Had a lot of people wanting to see a roughing out of the natural edge bowl from the series where I started with a log, but well, the walnut piece, it just wasn't going to be any good. The bark was not going to stay on there. So I was on my way home the other morning from work, and I found this tree service cutting down these beautiful trees right down in town. Trees I've been familiar with since I was a kid. But I stopped in there, of course, and I said, you know, hey, can I have some of this wood? And he said, sure thing, you just can't have the cedar. Somebody at the church had already claimed it, but it was in the yard of a church. So there was a couple of oak trees and stuff like that he was cutting down. So I came back and with my chainsaw, and I cut me some of that, and I've got a piece of it right here, which we're fixing to get started on. I believe the bark will be really good on it. It's good and tight on there right now. So I'm going to get started on this piece here, and I'm going to try to cut this on my bandsaw, which I'm not sure how it's going to turn out. It may I may end up having to get outside with a chainsaw, but it's a pretty nasty day here in Georgia. It's pretty chilly outside, and it's windy, and it's probably fixing to rain and snow and hurricanes and everything else. Okay, to start out with, I've got my log here, or my bowl, blank, and I'm going to take this rough shape and cut it down. I've got a 9-inch circle. I cut a bunch of these up. They're about 1-inch increments, anywhere from 6 inches up to almost 12. And I'm just gonna mount this thing in here where I want my bowl blank to come from. And I'm just looking at it, and I believe I'll get just as balanced as I can. We'll be fine right here in just a minute. So I'm just going to tack this in there. The circle covers is a little bit smaller than the whole blank. It'll be a little thick on the sides, which is what I want. I want to make kind of almost like a conical shaped bowl out of this. So anyway, that's all I needed right there. Let's get it on the bandsaw. Okay. Well, I've got a little bit of width right here that may cause me some problems. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to start out, make a couple of relief cuts up to my disc, and maybe that'll help me later. There we go. Good bowl blank. But it's very rough on your bandsaw. All this bark has got dirt and stuff impregnated in it, and that's why I don't like using the bandsaw to rough out natural edge bowls or bowls really in general anyway. I prefer using the chainsaw for it. I just wanted to do that kind of as a demonstration for you. Okay, well, we'll get this thing ready to mount up on the lathe, and we'll get started turning. Alright, now we just have to get a good flat spot for our we just have to get us a good flat spot right here for our wormwood screw. I just want to get a relatively flat place here that I can get the shoulders of my jaws when I tighten down on the wormwood screw. Alright, now, okay, here we go. Now let's just get our mark back. We'll get everything lined back up on the bulb length as much as possible. Alright, that should leave me a good mark on my... Okay, there we are, right there. Got my drill bit in here for my wormwood screw. I'm going to go about 1 inch deep. That's probably about 1 inch deep. It's deep enough for my wormwood screw, I know that. Then what I'm going to do is, just as kind of a reference, I'm going to go ahead and mark the back side also. Line everything up good and just... my tailstock may not hit that spot, but then again, it should hit very close. So, now I'm just going to get her mounted up. Alright, now, got my wormwood screw here, already mounted in my chuck, and I'm just going to screw this thing on there. Get her screwed on there real good. And that flat spot that I made mates up with the shoulders of the jaws and gives it a very good, secure against that shoulder. Alright. Okay. We're going to be a little bit out of balance, but I don't think it's going to be too awful bad. And we shall get started. Okay. Well, now she's all mounted up. Got my tailstock up. Good. Everything's good and secure. What I'm going to do is I'm going to put a tenon on the back, and when I come back to final turn this later, in another couple months or so, or a couple weeks, whatever how long it takes, I'm going to need a tenon that'll fit my chuck. Okay, so my chuck is 2 5/8, inch and a half to 2 5/8. So I want it to be as small as it can get, where my chuck jaws are down round. So I'm going to start out. I'm going to make it a little bit bigger. I'm going to measure this out to about 1 1/8 inch, so I'll end up with a 2 1/4 inch tenon. Right, so that's what I've done. I'm just going to mark it, so I'll know about where the tenon should be, and that should be about a 2 1/4 inch tenon. And it will be. It's almost 2 1/4 right there. So what that'll do is, as this thing contracts across the grain, my tenon will kind of elongate a little bit, and that gives me enough room to round it back down and still be able to get into the jaws later. Alright, so now with that marked, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to get started trying to rough this thing out. And I'm going to use my face shield. First of all, a lot of bark flying off of this thing and all that. So I'm just gonna do some pull cuts across the bottom, start trying to get everything trued up, and just start working on this bowl. Give her a little look, see what we got. Okay, I'm getting almost where I need to be right there. Once I cut all this, I'll start running up the sides a little bit. Just take it nice and easy. Now I should be just about, boy, that wood's good and soaking wet. Okay. Alright, I'm good to go here. I mean, I've got a surface that I can really work with now. So what I'm going to do is go ahead and start trying to work this thing around the corner here. Now what's happening, it starts out with a good cut, and then as I get into this open area, then I start getting kind of a chatter. But that's alright, we're just roughing this thing out. Okay, one thing to talk about here, as I start going up this bowl, notice I'm going up the bowl. This grain runs straight across. If I start coming down the bowl, what I'm doing is I'm pushing the grain in front of the tool, which wants to fold it down, and there's no support behind it. You know, once I start getting this thing shaped. So coming up will always give you your best cuts. But now this is a natural edge bowl, and as you come up, if you're not careful, you'll tear off the bark, which you really don't want to do. Very light cuts down this side here. Rub these and tear it out. Okay. Now you can see the cuts are not as good coming down as they are going up. But I've almost got it all trued up. Got a couple more little flat spots there. But what I'm going to try to do is make one good pass up the bowl. I'm going to try to get one good pass and see just how strong that bark is. I may be able to come up with it. Okay. If I can get a good pass up through here. Not trying to force anything, let's look at it. See how the bark looks. Okay. I'm making good cuts so far on it, but my tools are very sharp right now. The bark hasn't really caused any problems with my tools. So I'm going to move in a little bit closer and get another bite. I'm going to try to run this on up, give me a nice little sort of a curve up here at the top, maybe a curve down here at the bottom, blend them together. Bring this in a little bit closer. What we're looking at. Good. Keeping the bark. Good. I've got fairly lucky with this. I'm going to start scraping down the side just a little bit. Just using a little skid scrape here. Trying to smooth up this cut. shaving, I'm going to kind of round the bottom just a little bit and go ahead and start cutting my tenon. I'll switch to my 1/2 inch ball gouge. Go ahead and start flattening off my tenon. Good. Okay, got a good square tenon, good shoulder. I'm getting about ready to turn this thing around, but I'm going to make a couple of little finishing cuts on here coming up, and hopefully I can get this thing finished up on the outside pretty quick. Go back to my 1/2 inch ball gouge, make a pull cut. A little bit of fuel strength in here. A little bit of flats right here. I'm just going to finish taking care of this outside. All right. I'm having to use a wrench right now. I've got to order a new handle. Alright, now I like this. See, I've got some moss and stuff hanging off of here and everything else. But I'm going to go ahead and start sanding a little bit. Normally, I would take this bowl, and it's a 9-inch bowl, so I'd go just less than 1 inch on my hollowing, and I would pack it in shavings and let it sit until it cures. But on this one, I'm going to turn it thin and let it warp the way it wants to warp, and then I'll come back and just flatten the bottom and finish it up. Okay, got her reversed around now. I've got her sanded down to about 220, you know, which I'll have to go back and re-sand it all again later anyway. But what that's done is it's pretty much removed all my tool marks and things like that, so you know, it'll make sanding later a whole lot easier. But what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go ahead and start hollowing. And what I want to do is I want to get this really thin, probably around 1/4 inch or maybe even less, because I want this thing to warp on its own. Normally I would cut, it's 9-inch diameter, I would cut just below 1 inch wall thickness here and pack it in shavings and all, let it cure. That way I could come back and I could have a true, you know, circular bowl. But I don't want this one circular. I want this one to warp up on its own, do whatever it wants to do, and once it's finished doing what it wants to do, then I'm going to sand it and I'm going to finish it. And the only turning that I'll really do is on the back to flatten off the back so it'll sit good. But I'm going to start out with my 5/8 bowl gouge, and I'm just going to start hollowing this out. Okay, now, as we start this hollowing, you've got to really watch and keep everything good and tight, because what's going to happen is this tool rest is going to vibrate and get up against your bark, and you just lost everything you've been trying to save. So make sure everything stays good and tight. The tool rest stays good and tight, because with the vibration, things will tend to get loose on you. The tool rest kind of gets in your way here, but it's a whole lot safer to turn with it up. So I always try to start out. Okay, now I am being kind of aggressive here because I've just got a lot of material to move, but I've also got my tailstock up to help and hold everything secure. Once I get the tailstock out of the way, then you'll have to be making, you have to be really careful with your cuts. So, here we go. Okay, I'm getting close to my edge now. I'm about a ½ inch from the edge. So I'm starting to have to be very, very careful. And I've just resharpened my tools because this bark is really taking a toll on them. But anyway, here we go. Getting very close. This is where you have to be very careful or you'll lose your bark. And I'm just watching this ghost image right here. Just watching this ghost image. Okay, I'm going to switch to my 3/8 bowl gouge and start doing a little bit of scraping. Alright, let's see where we're at. I think I just lost a piece of bark. Nope, I sure didn't. Alright, I'm down about a 1/4 inch. I'm just going to keep on jumping. Now you've got to be very careful with your scraping, because you will pull the bark right off. All I'm doing is just removing the tool mark. I'm down here just about where I want to be. Okay, now I'm wanting you to see what I'm doing here. Now, as you can see, I've got my bark down. It's probably about a 1/4 inch. That's what it is. It's right at a 1/4 inch. So you see how it looks wide right here. That's just because I haven't got down in there yet. But you can watch that ghost image as it comes around, and you can watch your tool going in. So as far as keeping everything uniform, it's actually pretty easy to do. Just make sure that as you get on down that you're doing good scraping or finishing type cuts here, so that you don't have to worry about your tool marks. Because what's going to end up happening is this is going to get very fragile around through here, and the bark especially. So make sure you do your finishing cuts and stuff before you get too deep into the bowl. Well, I'm going to keep hollowing until I get this thing about a 1/4 inch all the way down. And okay, now I've got down past my bark. I've got good finishing cuts, or actually I was able to scrape this. I've got good good scraping cuts here, very little bit of tool marks. So I'm just following this edge all the way around, try to get a uniform thickness all the way down, and well, I got one little chip out right there, but that's not a problem. So anyway, I've switched to my 3/8 ball gouge to finish up this project here, because the 5/8 is going to be too aggressive. You want to be very careful of these edges here as you're working, because those edges are very sharp and they can cut you. Alright, so here we go. Just going to keep on going. Okay, one other thing I'm going to do too is, as I go, I'm going to be using my calipers to check my thickness, my wall thickness. And the way I do that is I just pinch it down barely against the edge and rub it back and forth, and I can read the other end here will tell me how thick it is. So that way, as I go back and forth, I can tell where any thick spots are or any thin spots, and I can actually get all the way into the bottom with them also, to make sure that the bottom's thick enough. So we're just going to keep on going. Got a long way to go. Alright. Okay. All I've got left now, I've got my depth. I'm about a little over a 1/4 inch down there, because I'm going to have to true this back up later. But all the way up the wall, I'm about a 1/4 inch. So that should give me a nice little thickness there. And all I'm going to do now is I'm just going to go back and just kind of scrape the bottom, just knock off any tool marks and things like that that may be let's see what we got here. Okay, kind of like that. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to come back, and I've already scraped up the walls with my gouge. I did shear scraping there. But what I'm going to do now is I'm going to come back, I'm just going to sand it. I don't really see any tool marks in here, but I'll make sure I get all my tool marks out, so I'll be ready to sand it later. Now I can get rid of that thing. Alright, 150 sandpaper, and I'm just gonna I really don't see any tool marks, so I'm just gonna go over it, sanding it pretty good, but it's really looking fairly nice. But I'll be back when I get done with this, and we'll see where it's at. Alright, well, we've got her done. I'm just going to go ahead and write down what type of wood it is. I'm going to put oak. I don't really know what type of oak. All I know is it's oak, and then the date, January 21st, 14. That way, That way, once I get it in my shavings, I'll be able to tell which one's which. But what we did, we got this really thin, and what I'm hoping is going to happen, is that this thing is going to elongate, or actually it doesn't elongate this way. What it does is it shrinks across the grain this way, but it makes it look like an oval shape, and it may, you know, twist and turn some other ways and stuff like that. But as thin as it is now, it shouldn't crack, so I shouldn't have to worry about that, hopefully. The only reason I really left my tenon was because I need that little point right there, and that way I can get this centered back up, and whenever I get ready to turn the bottom again, because this thing's going to warp and it won't sit flat, so I'll mount it back in the lathe later, and that's the only turning that I'll do on it. And I'll take that tenon off, I'll concave my bottom or put whatever design I want on it, and then we'll finish it with some type of finish. But anyway, there it is. People had been asking. Now, had this, if I wanted a perfectly round bowl when I got done, I would have to leave this a little under 1 inch wide wall thickness and pack it in shavings when I got done, and just wait until it got dry. And once it got dry, I'd take it back out, put it back on the lathe, and do all my finish turning, get it back trued up, and everything else. So there we go. There's a natural edge walnut bowl, and all I've got to do now is finish the bottom and put the finish on it. So y'all have a good day. It's starting to get cold out here. I'm headed into the house. So y'all have a good day.